Okay, ladies and gents, so today I'm talking to Liam for the first of these videos. So, Liam, hello.
Hello, Mike.
How's it going?
It's going quite well. It's pretty hectic.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. To start off with, just explain your role a little bit on the project, what you've been up to mainly.
Okay, so I guess similarly to the other guys, we're sort of jack of all trades. Yeah. Mostly what I've done up until now has been algorithm type stuff. So anytime the ants need to do something, like I did a lot of work on the job system. So where you give them jobs and then the ants themselves actually, they have to decide which job to do. And that can get incredibly complicated when you've got lots of jobs and lots of ants. You don't want to put jobs down in different places and have the ants that are really far away from the jobs going to them. You want the ants to sort of organise themselves intelligently.
Mm-hmm. It's the thing when people see the game, and it looks quite simple and straightforward. There's a lot of stuff that goes behind it.
Yeah. If you want to know more about that problem, you can find out on Wikipedia if you look at the travelling salesman problem. It's the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I also worked on the ant swarming. So that's an ongoing thing because that's changed a lot over the course of the project. But that's how the ants move around through the nest. So not where they're going, but just how they navigate in their own little personal space. Yeah,
is that like how they kind of respond to other ants around them as well?
Yeah, exactly. So that they're not all doing the same thing and walking in a perfect straight line. If they can't get through each other, they try a different direction and these sort of things. Yeah. And that has to be. There's a sort of trade-off between them intelligently finding a path through the other ants and just sort of doing something a little less involved, because the more ants that are really thinking about exactly where they're going, the more intensive it is for the computer, and then
your frame rate's going to drop and you're going to complain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, algorithm-wise, that I started on just recently is the bot AI. So when there's an enemy ant colony in the game, that's going to have to play against you, and it's going to have to be fairly intelligent. Okay, so the other big thing that I've been working on at the moment is the music and the sound effects. Yeah, and I sort of come in and out of this as I get a sort of bit of spare time where other things don't need doing.
Okay, so
that's mostly me, I think.
What kind of tools are you using to do the music for the game, like synthesizers and such like?
So I learned how to use FL Studio, which it's a sequencer. It's a paid sequencer, but it's on the really cheap end.
To be honest, you have to think about budget with these things.
Yeah, we are on a budget with this, and you can actually do a lot of things with it that you can do with the more expensive sequencers. And the only real big downside that I can see to FL Studio is that it's set up to look like some child DJ's wet dream. Maybe I can reskin it, but the default skin just looks like someone got really excited with the skin and put all fancy knobs and things over everything. It's really unnecessary, but the software itself is actually really good.
Fantastic.
And then with that, of course, that's just the sequencer, so that comes with some sounds and things, but you have to import other instruments. So there's a lot of free stuff on the internet, free synthesizers, free recordings of instruments. But if you want something that's a bit extra quality, especially, there's an awful lot you can do with just synthesized music with free tools. But for orchestral things, you hit a limit where the only decent stuff has been recorded professionally in a proper studio with proper musicians, and you have to pay for that.
So, is there anything special you can tell us about how the music's going to work in Empires of the Undergrowth?
Yes, there is. Okay, so I wanted music that was dynamic, that changed depending on what was happening in the game. I don't know if other RTSs must do it. You probably don't notice a lot of the time that it's going on, but I remember it very specifically from probably because I played it recently on the tablet. But I was playing Zed. It's an old RTS game, really old one, with little robots in it.
Yeah.
And all they did was they just have one track that's really basic, and it's just a loop. It's a MIDI loop. But once you're about to destroy the enemy base, it switches to another loop that's really sort of more powerful and
follows the same kind of beat and pattern.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it really added a lot to the game. It made the ending, which was actually quite mundane in Zed, because you really steamrolled over the enemy, and by the end you were just grinding to win.
Sure.
But it made that last moment sort of, I don't know, good somehow, just by putting this music in. So I really wanted something like that in Empires. And then I went over the top with my plans. So what I really should have done, there's different ways of doing dynamic music. The best way, especially I think for a team this size, and what I really should be doing, is to have several tracks and then fade between those tracks.
Yeah,
so they're all running in unison, and then you can just bring one down, bring one up. The problem is, the reason I didn't want to do it is the music has to be quite simple to do that. It's great for, you know, if we were making a platformer and we wanted some chiptune music, and it was sort of, you know, like just a couple of jingles, like repeating. So we're not going with this fading system now. We're going with something else. It's not as what's the word? It's not as quick to change. So it's not as responsive. Sometimes the music can take up to 30 seconds to respond. So it's more of a gradual change in mood over the game. But there's some clever things we can do with it. The way it works is the music's cut into chunks. So the music is all in the same key. It's actually in two different keys, but for the sake of this, it's all in the same key. And they're just chunked in time, and they go on to the end of each other. And then there'll be several different tracks that are completely different. And then at any point in time, you can switch to a transition track, which will move you from one layer to another layer. So I've sent you a video that demonstrates that.
That'll be playing now.
Right. Okay. Perfect. So that's just it starts with the same track, sort of quite happy and victorious music, and then it's got a sort of big moment building up to a sort of a climax, and that's the bit that's the transition piece. So on the first case, it sort of builds up to a great climax, and then comes in with more sort of you know, oh, here come the ants. But then the other one, as it's building up, it starts to get dissonant, and these horrible noises start to appear, and it gets quite scary, and then it comes into this sort of horror, death ball is coming towards you, the spider is arriving, that sort of thing. So this is quite, you know, time consuming, as you can imagine.
It's quite an involved system. Yeah,
you have to create all of these transition pieces, but hopefully the effect will be quite nice. Of course, we've got to make something to control this as well. There'll be two pieces in the game, two components that deal with this. We're calling them the orchestra and the conductor. So the orchestra,
a little almost AI, which kind of
exactly.
the situation and
So there'll be an AI conductor that he will take all of the information, like what's going on in the game, how many ants there are, who's in battle, are we winning the battle, that sort of thing, and then the conductor will say to the orchestra, okay, now you need to switch to this track, and the orchestra will say, well, hang on a minute, we need 20 seconds to do that, and the information will get fed back and forth. That's the general idea.
Excellent. So I'm just going to play a little video now, which you uploaded a while ago. Yeah, okay. So tell us a little bit about your approach to creating sound effects for the creatures and the various things like rubble and whatever.
It goes back to, there's two methods that I use. It goes back to when we used to make videos together.
Yeah. If people don't know, me and Liam, we go back a long way. We used to make short films.
Yeah. And one thing I discovered when we were doing it's called Foley, where you have background noises in your video, not voice, not music, but people treading on leaves and this sort of thing. For the vast majority of that, you don't need a very good microphone. you can do it. You can do it with anything, especially if you're making weird sounds and you're going to distort them, and you don't really know what you're trying to get at the end anyway. You can do a lot of things just with cheap equipment. So I started making sounds just using my laptop microphone because I don't have a proper microphone. And as you can see from the video you just played, I can make a lot of the creature sounds by just playing with my own voice. So
I'm told, by the way, that this is pretty much the same professionally as well.
Yeah, a lot of people said that. I mean, when we put the video up, there were lots of comments. Oh, you've given the secret away, and so yeah, I think this is pretty standard the way people do things. For stuff that I can't do myself, I mean, of course, it's not just my voice. I can bang things about. I've had a lot of difficulty actually, and I still haven't got it right doing ant footsteps.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because
yeah, it's something I've still got to work on. I've tried like crunching crisp packets and moving my fingers across, and the difficulty is getting. It always sounds like the ants are wearing stilettos or something. I need to get a sort of more of a mush of lots of ants together, and I think rather than having the individual ants making the sounds, I need to add something into the game where we can see how many ants are present and sort of choose maybe a sound of 100 ants or a sound of 50 ants that's sort of playing all together. It's sort of more of a static sound.
So how do you find working collaboratively with the other guys, but remotely? Because you're in Germany, the other two guys are in England.
It's difficult. We met up. We meet up sometimes. We met up last month. The other guys saying, I suppose I agree to an extent that it slows them down a lot when we're working together. But I think that's more because we're catching up with a lot of game discussion that we don't get to have because we don't work in an office together. And we try and have a weekly meeting or a fortnightly meeting on Skype. But there's always a lot of stuff to get through, and it's difficult. It's difficult even to put an agenda together and get through that because you just, as you're working, you think of stuff. And so, I mean, last time we got together, we were all over the place discussing all different things that were really, you know, it was a backlog and we didn't actually get much done, but I think it was actually quite valuable to do that. So it is a problem in one sense. In another, I think it's not so bad because we're all working on fairly separate parts of the game, and as long as we understand how they plug into each other, it's not so difficult. It does, when things do overlap, we do have a problem actually, but the way we deal with that, come to think of it, me and John especially, we do quite a lot of video Skype, where either it's usually me actually, because I'm less familiar with Unreal Engine in general than and John and Matt are. I like to try everything out in MATLAB first, and then say, right, okay, what's everything called? I want to put it in. So especially when I'm working with something John or Matt's done, what I'll do is I'll share my screen on Skype, and then we'll spend a few hours, and they basically will watch me code, or I'll show them something that I've done, and that's really quite useful.
Okay, so I think that's everything. The music that's been playing throughout this, by the way, is some of the music that Liam's been working on for the game.
Is it?
Yes. Well, it will be, Liam. Yes. Okay. Right. Thanks for your time, Liam. Right. Tomorrow we'll be talking to Matt, who's one of the developers as well. Okay. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.